Hi there. Today I'm going to have a topic and I'm going to call it My Dog, Marxists, and Getting Ahead of the Curve. So, again, I'm going back to this whole thing of, you know, taking the top and the source of the problems, tackling the top and the source of the problems. These bagmen for the Rothschilds, George Soros, Lord Renwicks of the world, etc. There's, the billionaire philanthropists, pedophiles group. And I thought of my dog that I had many years ago. It was a great dog, Labrador cross Rottweiler, kind of a medium-sized dog, and he was a very intelligent dog. I could throw a stick, and anywhere he would come back with that exact same stick. I could throw it into a pile of sticks. He was an amazing retriever and excellent watchdog. Not afraid to have a go at anybody. He was a bit of a leader of the pack, actually, among dogs, as it so happens. Even though he was often not the biggest dog in the pack, but for some, dogs are interesting animals. But I think that he was a leader of the pack and a great animal. But one of the things I used to do with my dog is play that old roughhousing game where you get your hands and you try and attack him from this side and attack him from that side. And he didn't think this game was that much fun. This dog, he kind of thought, nah, he would take a lot of shit from me, but he didn't like this game. And also, he figured out, there's pointless going for this hand, biting this hand, then I'll come around and get him with the other hand, and then vice versa. And, everybody plays that game with the dog. But he figured out, no, I'm not interested in those hands anymore because that's just too much trouble. He used to just go straight up and nip me in my stomach. It's like, enough now. As soon as I started playing that game, and he figured out that you attack the source of the problem that you can get. It's pointless going for these satellites, fast moving kind of targets. So immediately I'd start the game and he'd get fed up and just straight away nip me in the stomach. He's like, hey, come on, what's that all about? But that's a similar thing to why dogs are smarter than people currently. Because here's an example where everybody's moaning about Ramaphosa and Boris Johnson or whoever it is across the planet, these leaders, these so-called leaders who are actual puppets. I mean, anybody thinks that they are, making the decisions and so on, that they're dumber than a dog. And it's not a bad thing to be dumber than a dog because dogs are pretty smart, it seems, much smarter than people. So, you've got these billionaire pedophile philanthropists, you've got the hidden forces at the very, very top, your Warburgs and Rothschilds and Schiffs. It's all the same families. There's a lot of them. The Rothschilds family is probably a few hundred. It's across the world. They have younger people too. It's not just Jacob and the guys at the top. But anyway, you still got this idiocy of playing politics and playing the games of the globalists that the globalists want you to play. And instead of going and dealing directly with the problem. So that's just, again, reiterating my same old points again, that these people need to be dealt with. Even if it's a bunch of guys who just go there and apprehend them and just literally take them off and don't reveal their location, anything. As much as people say, oh, but it's so difficult to do that, and it's it's definitely a lot easier to do that than what was done in World War II or World War One, or avoiding all of these other wars, which were driven by the same um, profiteering kind of human enslavement psychos. I mean, even Vietnam, the operation that was, done there. America in the war in the Pacific in World War II mobilized 11 million men. 11 million, the logistics of that alone. Uh, we're talking about an operation that would be minuscule. Minuscule. It wouldn't take much at all. A hell of a lot less than what people achieved in the past by a factor of, 1,000. So just think about that, and also getting rid of this monopoly capitalism, and where basically they're claiming that it's a free market or that it's capitalism, and we know it's not. Now, they gave us this paradigm of communism versus capitalism, and that's a trap. It's like you've only got these two choices. You've got a vomit sandwich and a crap sandwich. It's like, what do you, they don't actually give you true freedom in any of those scenarios. In the debates in the universities, and especially with younger people who haven't thought that there's a third option. What about the third? Don't give me those two options. It's like someone saying, which president did you like the best, Mandela or de Klerk? And I would have to say, well, why are you only giving me those two options? What about Verwoerd? Giving you two crap options, that is very much what goes on in politics as well. You've got the choices of these useless puppets, and everybody else is basically prevented from even getting to the voting ballot. But also, go back to my kind of what I've uncovered and listening to various people, is the unbelievable involvement of Britain in toppling, all these African colonies. Even the Spanish Civil War, what were they doing, trying to meddle in? I think the George Orwell was a communist, and he was there in the Spanish Civil War in Spain. But overall, just the backing of Marxists by Britain continually, and I'm starting to realize I'm living in a communist country, and this is possibly the source of a lot of communism in the West. The English-speaking countries were a lot more communist a long time ago than what we realized. And also the royal family in Britain, I do not think that they are ethnically British anymore. I think there's definitely, 90% of them, if not the Queen themselves and Prince Charles themselves, are probably, partially Rothschild, kind of linked somehow. Because in the 1800s and way back when the royals were put into debt by these banksters, and a lot of the ways of getting out of it was unholy alliances in their marriages. I remember seeing some kind of comical cartoon of some lord or whatever it was, and he was drawn quite well proportioned and long coattail, as you could in a cartoon, look kind of handsome. And he's in the delivery room of the hospital, and they're presenting his child. There's all the scraggly features and this funny looking kid, and then the wife is sat and laying in the bed there, a Jewess. not of their, best looking selection, because you do get attractive Jewish people, obviously, but just the message that it was sending, it was also it was an old cartoon. It was probably from the early 1900s or something. So it was showing already back then they knew these lords and royals and what have you were, intermarrying with non-Christians and non-ethnic British, as it so happens. So, you just go through all of history for a long time now and seen that Britain's been incredibly involved in communist and Marxist kind of activities. And I actually think it might even be a default setting for, 70% of British people. Is that they're kind of that way leaning. I mean, they can pick out a free man, instinctively. Human perception is very good. So obviously a lot of South Africans, or maybe, people who come here that will, from wherever they've come, that have a free mindset of instantly identified, and kind of, shunned even socially. A lot of these things in communism, this is the worst part about it. They don't even have to do the high level stuff. They just get involved in the clubs and the societies and the psyche of people. And that to me is the most destructive part, has ripped the heart and soul out of humanity. George Orwell himself said, but not George Orwell, Alexander Solzhenitsyn said, nothing lowers your moral and intellectual horizons more than communism, Marxism. And you can see it, like where you can never really have a fair and decent conversation with anybody. Especially in the UK, it seems that like they just want to talk about superficial things or not at all. And it's a very strange, and that psyche and mindset seems to belong in the the white British heads more than anything, as much as they've been infiltrated and artificially inseminated by third world immigration. Also, we had our classic bullshit in our history classes. I remember specifically never quite being able to put together the World War II, and I actually think my teacher disliked me for keeping on questioning it. I think he was Jewish as well. I'm not going to mention who he was. It was a guy at Sachs, but a lot of these people, they change their names or surnames or whatever. I don't know why they do that, but just why would you not want to discuss? You could discuss all kinds of things. But the minute when I was asking, like I was confused about Russia, like what, it doesn't seem like communism is being, there's a huge big gap missing when you start asking questions about anything. And it's also seemed to me that they accused the Germans in the history class of what actually the communists did. Sorry, the factor of like families ratting out, children ratting out their parents or vice versa. Communists, it was communist informant society sounds a lot more Russian. And they kind of said, no, this was what the Nazis were doing. But I don't think so. I think that was a direct switcheroo, by our teacher to kind of accuse, the Nazis of just being irrational. And then, of course, he discussed how they had the Nazi breeding program and eugenics, and I didn't seem to find a fault with, um, you know, I mean, in nature, you choose a partner based on health anyway and good looks, which is a reflection of health. Is it really such a heinous crime? I mean, obviously, for me, the type of eugenics that they're doing now is a crime, you know, where they want to make it's eugenics one way or the other. They want to say that kind of mixing everybody is the best eugenics, but it's, and these Germans that did this, they all had birth problems and back problems, and I don't know, it didn't look too unhealthy to me when you see those pictures of a few million of them lining the streets and whatever. Yeah, so this whole misconception of and misrepresentation that was deliberately put there, and I can remember specifically being taught in this way. Also, when all these communist regimes fell, did the communists really go away? You have to look into Eastern Europe and Russia and all of that, and that's another question which, because these people don't let go of power. They don't let go of the actual power. And I think they just liked the fact that the Berlin Wall was down, so now they had more freedom, actually, for their own selves. Because now we didn't have our guard up in the West. And quite honestly, it seems that way because we've been demolished, basically, in the Western countries since that Berlin Wall came down. So the Berlin Wall might have been more of a protection for us than anything else. While we ponder all these things, you also have to look at the specific influences of, Jewish kind of Bolshevism throughout all of our troubles, where you can go right through Africa. South Africa has the second oldest communist party on earth, Russia being the oldest official one, and South Africa the second oldest. And we know who founded the communist parties, and we know who the first leaders were of the communist parties. You're not allowed to say any truth, but you must say truth. You are allowed to say the truth. Don't let people fool you about you're not allowed to say anything that's true, and because you can get into trouble. At the end of the day, I reserve the rights to all my words, and they have no right to tell me what to say, what to do, how to do it, how I may choose my friends, how I may choose, allies, and what's right and what's wrong, other than biblically, which is handed down from God Himself. So I'm not really afraid of being kind of having my life destroyed or whatever it is, because I don't accept any kind of guilt, and that's a big thing. It doesn't matter what they say to me. I will never feel any kind of remorse or guilt. I would like to actually make them feel remorse and guilt for the unbelievable savagery that's taken place in South Africa due to Ronnie Casseroles and Joe Slovo. You can 100% put that on their doorstep. They incited the violence against us and used the very crummy, pathetic excuses. And Ronnie Casseroles described one day seeing this black gentleman being beaten up in the streets. And let me tell you, that is disgusting. And those people should have been locked in jail. That is a crime. That's called assault, or it's attempted murder. And there's laws for these things. But he was going, oh, no, no. This is now going to be us, because this is the Nazis now, you see. And we cannot tolerate this, so we must do this, which is another thing, this preemptive strike that comes from these think tanks, and seems to have infiltrated the Western world now, where just perceiving them as a threat, you can do a preempt. They give them such lovely sounding words as well. So basically, that's a right to attack somebody who may actually be totally innocent. So there was a preemptive strike as such against the ethnic Christian Afrikaners, specifically in South Africa, although it actually affected the English guys a hell of a lot, because they didn't have the farms, they didn't have the networks, having not actually been in control of the country since, I think, the 60s. Obviously, the rich liberal English are the biggest culprits, and they skipped away without a scratch from the whole thing. The bringing down of South Africa and 114 laws against whites in the workplace. But we see clearly who was behind it all. And though they are the establishment, they are no less criminals to me. They can lock me up in jail, or they can play their other subversion games where, you're excommunicated and suddenly you find all kinds of problems with trying to start businesses, or even a direct attack, and dragging you into a court. I simply wouldn't submit to any of it. You can physically drag me there, or put me in jail or whatever. But it's meaningless to me. It's obviously, it will be terrible. Jail would be horrible. But I don't accept any of their authority at all. Nobody has a right to tell you who you may like and who you may not like, and things like that. And they're not even enforcing the actual serious rules in the country. We're having whites having themselves hacked with a panga, and the things that were done to girls, and some of them were quite silly, to be honest. Why were they hanging around these people, putting themselves at risk, which is also part of the blame for that kind of thing lays at the doorstep of the white English-speaking kind of liberals, who kind of have this idea that, it's everybody's just human. We're all just the same, and you throw all your kind of discriminations out the window and whatever. And it's very easy to fall victim when you don't have those guards. Those two girls traveling in Morocco, that is a prime example where you can be sure that their Norwegian mom and Swedish moms and told them, be sure to pack warm clothes and a raincoat and have all your survival stuff. The mountains can get very cold, but they get their head hacked off by, third world, country that may have seen these two girls in another light to how we see them, where they're untouchables, where a man dare not even talk to one of them, let alone, reprimand them for behaviors or anything like that. they are like the supreme beings in the Western world, and they think that a kind of they can go and march around in the third world and it'll be the same. And you get these stories of girls going through India, and every single one of them is like it's had some kind of incident that was either very unpleasant or a little bit unpleasant or uneasy. And I always tell them straight up, like, what made you think that was safe for you to do? And they never seem to kind of catch on what I'm saying. They know what I'm saying, but they don't want to give you the satisfaction. Because they're still in the default setting of being at war with the straight white man, the free man. It's a very atavistic hatred, that does not stop. And I do kind of sense it threads in the UK, having been here for 3 years. There's definitely some kind of a strange, different way that they treat you. Whereas if you were third world immigrants, or anyone non-ethnically European, it seems that there's a different kind of way that they talk to you and friendliness that they deal with those people versus the way that they deal with straight white men. There's no doubt in my mind. People can say what they want. I don't really care. Those women could come, oh no, but you make you trying to seem like you're imagining things, which is part of the abuse of the whole thing as well. It's the same way that college girls get all coy and don't say anything about the racial aspect of the violence against the South African girls, but they'll jump on the gender bandwagon instantaneously without a moment's thought. And there's a deep rooted hatred. It's been planted there by the feminist marxists in the universities, in the schools, etc., etc. So, but my main point that I wanted to get at is, again, getting at the source of the problems, and still everybody's still talking about the same bullshit. And to me, there's no point talking about elections and Trump and this, that, and the other, when you can clearly see that the control strings do not go through the US president, no matter who was there. And I don't even think Trump is actually a genuine opposition, personally. He said the right things. He's, at times, in the build-up to the election and that type of thing. However, it's worse because if they had a Hillary win, all of our guards would have been up. And we would have been actively preventing a lot of what's gone on. Whereas the guards have gone down and people are kind of unaware and they kind of just assuming Trump is playing 4D chess and cuck like that. And I don't think it's the case at all. You have to just look at who his daughter is married to. This is not a small thing. This is not a thing to just kind of dismiss. But it also ties in with the Zionist kind of influence, which I was guilty of at one point as well. Kind of seeing Israel as this holy, blessed land, and the people who dwell in it are the Israelites and so on. And maybe Trump is in that same sort of camp where he's this Christian, but even so, he's still not, even if he was a bit Zionistic that way and was pro-Israel, at the same time, he's helped the cabal and left them kind of hindered in his own country. I think they built more of Israel's wall than it was being done in the States. And it's not just about a wall, actually. Quite honestly, what it should have done is just pulled all the military back from the Mideast and put them on the border and have that as your wall. They have so much technology and it would be far more effective than any war. And that would also send a statement to this cabal that wants us to go and attack the Middle East, who's got no bearing on the West. They couldn't harm the West in a million years. The only way they can harm them is with these terrorist attacks, because the borders are open and they fly in. They don't come across the Mexican border, or they don't have to, because they just fly in. And these are the things which Trump should have addressed, and were not addressed, and not nearly enough. I mean, I hear the story. I know I'm following the people who are living in the States, and they're talking about more immigrants than they've ever fucking seen. You can't come and talk cuck to me about Trump and how the election is so important. And are they going to blame him for the decline of the American economy? I mean, that's total cuck. That's just giving them the ability to actually rig it physically. And then, we don't have they're attacking him because of what he represents. So it's the demoralization program on us. But we need to get past that and need to look at actual results and start demanding nothing less than what someone represents or what they, said in the past. The results is what is needed. I mean, how is these riots taken off in the US, where entire city blocks have been actually just taken down? It's full-blown treason and overthrow within your own country, but without even a response. You can't tell me that he doesn't have the authority to sort shit out right away there. And the non-stop attacks against whites and that in America, which have taken place because of this BLM and Antifa, and it's not been dealt with. While we were locked down, had our freedoms removed, that was another example where Trump could have said, we're not doing that. No way. He just gets overridden every which way, and it doesn't even really say the right things in regards to it. He should be going, there's been no deaths. We're going to have a serious investigation now into this pandemic. It's not been a pandemic at all. And then there's been some strange kind of deaths as well when it has happened. And besides the fact that you don't respond like that in life, I think that's why so many people died in the Black Plague, was because one person in the family got it, so they locked up the whole family in their house. That person couldn't get food and it's fresh water and things like that, and the entire family as well. And they put guards outside the doors. The Spanish flu there's strong evidence that it was the vaccine that caused the high deaths, because they could give it to all the World War I soldiers. They had them all under military command, and they could inject them with this thing. And the complete capitulation of the churches has been something else. Where they had a perfect opportunity to stand up and say, no way, Jose. We're a faith-based thing, so there are certain things that are real physical problems, and obviously you don't stand in the way of a bloody train and pray and say, oh, well, the power of God can just stop this thing. But things like viruses and sicknesses and more sort of mercurial things, you absolutely have to believe as a Christian that's your source of saving is in the church. And at those times, that's exactly where you go. Don't shut it down. And the leaders of those churches as well. I mean, even top guys like John MacArthur's and the whole lot, I feel so kind of betrayed, actually. It's not that I didn't do anything, because I couldn't. I'm not a church pastor or anything like that. And I would have done it just purely to get up the nose of the establishment. If I did have, 1,000 people in my congregation or whatever, I'd make such a scene about it. But obviously, like, we don't all have those positions of authority. And then you have to question, now, is every single person a plant? You have to start looking into it. And I believe that we have been micromanaged. They've micromanaged clubs and societies. I know for a fact, my club that I'm part of posted on the WhatsApp group the official government report on the COVID-19 back in March, where they degraded it to, not high level, threat. It's on the official government website. How come we're all under lockdown, basically? And I just posted a picture, a screenshot of that, and immediately on their WhatsApp group, some guy I'd never heard of before, who's now the mental health kind of supervisor for anybody struggling, with this whole COVID thing. He shot back straight at me. Oh, try not to talk about anything COVID related on this group, and we try to, we don't know people's levels of fear. Basically, accusing me of promoting fear or something like that, which I was certainly, if you saw that as promoting fear, it was the exact opposite of promoting fear, because now you see this thing is not as dangerous as what they say it is. Why? That's safer. That's better for you. You don't have to sit there in terror. And then also enable, but what they didn't want is the obvious, that a whole group of people seriously question this lockdown. But I could see that all these clubs and societies are micromanaged. Business is obviously micromanaged to the nth degree. Their money comes from the same source, the financial kind of hubs of the world, which are all controlled by the monopoly capitalist billionaire pedophile philanthropists, MCBPs, whatever you want to call them, MCBPs. But yeah, there's just so many glaring, obvious lies going on. And we know where it's coming from. And my dog was smarter than most people. And it's a very unfortunate thing, because he knew how to deal with the source of the problem instead of trying to moan about the satellite issues, which people are doing, where they go, oh, Ramaphosa, why is he doing that? Oh, no. They can't understand, like, why isn't he helping the farm murders? You're never going to get it. So there's pretty much that alone is the biggest threat to society, is the sheer stupidity and insanity, actually, because you keep repeating the same process over and over again, and it's not making sense because you're not looking at another alternative. Anyway, I'll catch you again, and that's all for now.